America, we live in a crazy world, don't we? I want to talk to you about, real insanity today. There are some things happening in our country that you really need to understand. And the first thing is how to understand how the economy works. I want to explain to you, I think there's some economic terror coming our way. The economic terror alert system, I'll get into that in a minute, but I want to show you some of the stats on why I'm still very concerned about the economy and what is coming. You have to watch this show the full hour. The evidence is pretty overwhelming. The number of troubled banks has hit its highest level since 1993. It now stands at 829. The Fed says that they're not going to buy our debt, but now they are, especially if things get much worse, and I'm sure it's not going to. The Fed has already bought $1.4 trillion of our debt to stimulate the economy. Now, so you understand, the Fed buying our debt from the Treasury, they can't buy it directly, so they have to sell it to this cup. And they take money out of this one pocket and they say, hey, I'm going to give you this money, cup. And then the Treasury, this pocket, comes over and says, hey, I've got some debt to sell. You'd like to buy it? I'll take your money and put it. That's how it works. It's moving money from one pocket to another. It doesn't work. Now, we've spent an awful lot of money, and if I may have an ADD moment here, they will argue that if we don't spend enough money, it's going to never get better. And they're going to argue now that they didn't spend enough money the time before. Let's spend a moment on that. Do you remember how people complained that the cost of the Iraq war was going to bankrupt us and we couldn't afford it? It was destroying our economy. The CBO says the Iraq war was $709 billion, the total. The stimulus is $787 billion, and that is a low estimate and doesn't include the first stimulus with Bush or the ones they're talking about now. They didn't work, but we keep trying to do the same thing over and over again. Why? You will understand by the end of this hour. The latest barrage of spending started with George W. Bush, and I want to make that clear. And TARP, it was Bush that did it. $700 billion. He abandoned the free market system to save it. But he abandoned it before. First with the $85 billion to AIG, and then Obama, $17 billion to GM. Or was that Obama, or was that Bush too? I don't even know. They're almost interchangeable now. Now, maybe this bit of economic news will catch Obama's attention since it involves his new company. After all of the bailouts, after all of the money, after everything, GM sales have plunged 25%. And what's gone up? Homelessness in New York is almost up 50% this year. Here's a great figure. 1 out of every 6 Americans are now on some form of government assistance. Now, let me put this in perspective. Bring up a map. 1 out of every 6 Americans. That's like saying everybody in the state of Virginia is on government assistance. Or everybody in the state of Florida is on government assistance. Or everyone in the state of Texas is on government assistance. And actually, that's not true, because 1 out of every 6 being on government assistance is like all 3 of these states combined. Do you have a concept now of how much we're in trouble? Plus, you have the states that are completely upside down. Well, I want to make it clear, not all of the states are upside down. No, they're not all running. It's just these states that are upside down. There are 3 there, or is it? No, it's 3. 3 that aren't in trouble. So how do I know we're in real trouble? Because people with real money, and I don't mean, I don't mean the rich guy down the street. I mean George Soros. They're fleeing to gold. Now, I love this, how Congressman Weiner, went on a crusade to save customers from the pasty, fat white guy on TV. Because that was his life mission, because I was duping people into buying gold. George Soros is leaving the American market and getting into gold. They bashed me for doing radio commercials on my show for gold when gold was $800 an ounce. And they were saying, oh, Glenn Beck is duping everybody. They're going to lose their money. Really? It's now over $1,200 an ounce. That's today. And they're now saying yesterday that it could go up to $1,500 by the end of the year. Now, why would gold be going up? And historically, is that a big number? Well, first of all the liberal bloggers who have just put their Cheetos down because they're like, oh, you kidding me? He's talking about gold. I got to write a blog on that. I say, even on my radio program, I don't buy gold as an investment. It's insane. It's insane to buy gold. I buy it as insurance. And let me explain why. Because let me show you what gold is like. Do you remember the Department of Homeland Security? They had their color chart. Where are we? Over here. Their color chart. Show the color chart. Remember this color chart? This was severe risk of terrorist attacks. Well, there is a coded color chart that I've come up with now as well, just to explain this. An economic terror alert system. Our economy has warnings, warning colors. It's all color coded. You just know how to read it. You know, if you look at the chart, green, blue, yellow, orange, you kind of get it. The red one on this chart over here would be gold. This one. Now, I'm using this as a gold doorway because I want you to understand this is a door frame into insanity. You get to this point, things are nuts. It's like California. How nuts does it have to be in California when there's an earthquake to where you say, where is the only place that could possibly save me because the entire house is coming down? They tell you, stand in the door frame. Now, it's better to be outside. It's better to not be in a building. It's better to, not live in California for a lot of reasons. But if worse comes to worse and you have to stand there, you stand in the doorway. It's the safest place. Economically speaking, that has always been gold. It is the refuge and the safety net from inflation. Well, let me show you how this progression works. And you tell me where we are. Stocks is where everybody really has always been. When things are going well, you're in stocks. There's bonds, there's real estate, there's treasury, then there's gold, then there's insanity. The farther people move from gold, the better it is. Okay? The closer you get, the worse it is. Here's the general thinking. When times are good, you're in stocks. People are putting their money in their 401ks and their mutual funds, and everybody's okay, and their 401ks are stable, and so stocks are good. But as things start to get, unstable and a little dicey, and you start to feel, maybe an earthquake is coming, like 2 years ago, stock markets tanked, and people lost half of their money. And now we're on a roller coaster with the stock market. Where did people go? Well, some people lost everything. Some people just pulled it out and just hanging on it. But people with money, they went to someplace a little safer. They go to bonds. Maybe you're in Connecticut State Treasury bonds, which are so stable, right? Or you invest in a company. Now, what are bonds? Well, bonds are always safer because if a state or a company goes broke, the bonds are the first to get their money back because these are people who are big investors. You're gonna invest in GM and they need $100 million. Okay, I'll step in with $1 million and buy $1 million of GM bonds. But the agreement is that I get my money first. I'm the first. If it goes bankrupt, the bondholders get their money. That's contract law. It's always been that way until Barack Obama. GM and the unions, they go down. The union's retiree health care benefit trust got the billions. The bondholders, for the first time in history, get 5 cents on the dollar if they were lucky. Now you have cities like Miami and states breaking their employment contracts and the bond programs. So what do you have? You have people saying, well, wait a minute, if our contract doesn't mean anything, what do bonds mean? All right, so you're out of stocks. Now you can't trust an American contract anymore. So what's the next step? After that, I guess it's real estate. I had a guy who owns a lot of real estate tell me once, he said, man, I used to think that land would always be worth something. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Well, you know how the real estate market's going with you, right? You trying to sell your house? Yeah, me too. Fun. Even NPR is reporting that there may not be much the federal government can do to halt the housing market slide. Well, what does that mean? That means what we told you. You can't pour all of this money because you'll never stop the slide. So all of that money is wasted. It's gone. Sales are now the weakest in 15 years. The commercial real estate bubble is bursting. I told you it would happen a year ago. It is coming now. Companies are increasingly just walking away from their properties because they don't have the money. And it's actually cheaper than paying the mortgage. So they just walk away. All right. Stocks are unstable. Contracts you can't believe anymore. Real estate is still tanking. So then what? So then what? Treasuries. This is these two. This is not insane. This treasuries. That's the place of real safety. Now, how are they doing? Well, I mentioned a minute ago that the Fed is looking to buy its own treasuries. Take money from one pocket, print it, put it in this pocket. Now, why would you do that? Because nobody's buying these treasuries at a fast enough clip because we're spending too much. This is like investing in a company that sells pet rocks today, not in the 70s, but today. Nobody's buying pet rocks. So the rock people decide to buy their own pet rocks so they can invest in pet rocks. It's not going to work. How you feeling about your investment with the pet rock people? Yeah. Okay. Then treasuries. When things get really dicey like they did in the 70s with Jimmy Carter, that's when people say, you know what, I don't know if the federal government can do it. I'm going here. You're in the door frame because there's an earthquake. Now, this is the traditional point of insanity. And that's where we're going. And we're here because, well, gold prices are climbing. It's over $1,200 an ounce today because people don't trust any of these things. That's the problem. Now, look, it started with Bush and Obama. Obama's putting his foot on the pedal and doing even more. At least $4.4 trillion have added to the 10-year spending baseline in the last 31 months. $4.4 trillion. When Bush left office in January 2009, the national debt was $10.6 trillion. Here we are, 18, 20 months later? We're $5 trillion in the Bush administration, raising it up over 8 years. The biggest increase under any president, and now Obama is on pace to smash that record. Under Obama, in the first, 20 months, the debt is currently $13.4 trillion. And they keep turning a blind eye to all of our problems, like Social Security, as if everything is okay. It's not okay. It wasn't okay when Ronald Reagan talked about it the year I was born, 1964.
We're for a provision that destitution should not follow unemployment by reason of old age. And to that end, we have accepted Social Security as a step toward meeting the problem. But we're against those entrusted with this program when they practice deception regarding its fiscal shortcomings, when they charge that any criticism of the program means that we want to end payments to those people who depend on them for a livelihood. The actuarial head appeared before a congressional committee and admitted that Social Security as of this moment is $298 billion in the hole. But he said there should be no cause for worry, because as long as they had the power to tax, they could always take away from the people whatever they needed to bail them out of trouble. And they're doing just that.
Okay. FDR, he saw the problems. When he saw the first drafts of Social Security before the self-financing tax idea, he said, quote, it's almost dishonest to build up an accumulated deficit for the Congress of the United States to meet 1980. We cannot sell the United States short in 1980 any more than 1935. Well, we have sold the United States short, way short, and that's why gold is on the rise. Now look at these numbers, because this is important for you to understand. In 1980, the price of gold was $873 per ounce. Okay? Today, it's $1,246. So this looks like it's the highest ever, but it's not, because of inflation. Inflation, this price, if it was in today's dollars, would actually be $2,287. So we have a long way to go. So if things are this bad, what is suppressing this number? Why isn't gold today here? Well, there's two answers. It's not as bad as I tell you it is. Or, in the 1980s, they came up with another idea. Yeah, the Treasury learned their lesson. You see, they were spending too much and realized that people, remember, because gold all of a sudden just skyrocketed. When things got ugly, they realized people were running to that door frame and using gold. So they came up with something called Treasury Inflation Protected Securities.